Hello, America. I want to share something with you that I found in listening to a guy we've had on multiple times before, has great credibility, and has something really important to say. His name is Alex Newman. He's a journalist. He is the CEO of Liberty Sentinel Media. He's the author of Indoctrinating Our Children. We have had him on several times. But he's also somebody that used to live in South Africa. And so he has seen what is going on. And he's going to explain what's happening in South Africa like you've not heard before. But I want to share one thing that he wrote. Let me give you this paragraph so you understand. Newman fears America is much closer to a violent takeover attempt by the deep state. He says the leftists, the totalitarians, the people that want to do to us what they're doing to South Africans right now, they want a civil war in America. And a lot of people on our side do not see this. They don't realize the very dangerous forces that are being unleashed all across the country. They are preparing for an uprising, a violent revolution, and violence in the streets. They are deliberately trying to do this. We just saw a guy shooting a couple of embassy workers. This is just the beginning of what they're preparing. I want you to know this is what we did on the last Wednesday night special. We talked about this. Something is coming, and it is not good. He goes on to say they brought in special operators from communist China. They brought in intelligence assets and gangsters from Venezuela and Cuba. They're preparing to stir up domestic conflict that we've never seen before. We are in very grave danger as a nation, and I don't say this to scare anybody. The Lord doesn't give us the spirit of fear. I can say this so we can understand it and prepare for it and hopefully prevent it. Sun Tzu said, if you know yourself and you know your enemy, you're going to win every battle. We have to have a good understanding of the enemy or we are not going to win. Alex is here to share that understanding of the enemy in 60 seconds. First, here's a problem to consider. When someone is attacking you, most non-lethal options to defend yourself require you to be way too close. Pepper spray, tasers. Those are for when the threat is already on top of you, and if you miss, you're out of time. On the other end of the spectrum, you have a firearm. Yes, they're effective, but they also come with a terrible, terrible weight of knowing that using one correctly could change your life forever and end somebody's life forever. That's where the burner launcher comes in. It is a non-lethal self-defense tool that fires chemical irritant projectiles like tear gas up to 400 feet per second from as far away as 60 feet. It creates pain, panic, temporary blindness, and disorientation, giving you time to get away, call for help, de-escalate the situation before anybody else gets hurt. And unlike firearms, burner launchers are legal in all 50 states if you're over 18. They even have a compact version that you can carry on you all the time. Go to Byrna.com, get their no-hassle 5-year warranty with every launcher order, or use their retail store locator to find the nearest location that will offer live demonstrations, including Sportsman's Warehouse stores, Byrna retail stores, and authorized premier dealers. It is Byrna.com. Alex, welcome to the program.
Great to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Glenn.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking this stand and saying the things that really I don't think anybody is going to reward you for or even thank you for. And in many cases, I think I fear it will fall on deaf ears. And what we're talking about is the situation in South Africa. Everybody's focused on white genocide. But it is much, 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 much deeper than just that. It seems to me, Robert Mugabe in Rhodesia, when I was young, he took over. It was the breadbasket of Africa. He took it over, destroyed it, slaughtered people, became a horrible communist monster, and the world just stood there and watched. And I think we're going through the same thing now in South Africa. But you say this is the beginning of it. What's happening there is going to happen here. So let's start with your credentials on how do you know about South Africa?
Well, thank you, Glenn. And I actually moved there on the day of my 18th birthday. It's a long story, but I had a lot of money. I lived outside the United States, didn't want to come back, and so I just moved down there. I was young, dumb. I didn't know the Lord, but gave me a firsthand look at what was going on. I traveled all through the country and all through the region, and it was already bad at that time. It wasn't like what they're dealing with today, but it was already getting bad. And just by talking to people, I wasn't a Christian. I wasn't even especially conservative. But just by talking to people, you could get a sense of the hatred, of the division. You could see the infrastructure crumbling. You could see, everything was collapsing. Life expectancy collapsed more than 10 years in the immediate aftermath of the fall of the former apartheid government. So it was already bad. But it wasn't until I got back to the United States and started in journalism that I really started digging into the root of this. And what was really a turning point for me, Glenn, because I had heard all this living down there, but I wasn't quite sure what to make of it. But the turning point for me was in 2012 when a lot of people I knew from South Africa contacted me. An individual by the name of Gregory Stanton, Dr. Gregory Stanton. He's the founder of Genocide Watch. He was an anti-apartheid activist, so nobody could accuse him of being a racist or an apartheid supporter. He went down there on a fact-finding mission. And he had at that time a genocide scale with 8 stages. And after his fact-finding mission, he concluded that South Africa was at stage 6 at that time. 6 was the planning and preparation stage. 7 was the extermination phase. 8 was denial after the fact. And the evidence that he used was available to anybody. I could see it. People were sending this to me. The president of the country at that time, the polygamist pagan ruler Jacob Zuma, was on TV singing, "Bring me my machine gun. We're going to shoot all the Boers." You had the head of the ANC Youth League at that time, Julius Malema. Donald Trump just showed his video in the Oval Office last week saying, kill the Boer. We're going to kill the farmers. So
wait, hang on. Hey, stop. So before you go on, could you explain, because what the New York Times said was, you're just ignorant of all history if you think that's what that means. That's just a historic song. I don't care what the Klan was singing in 1860. If they're singing it, in front of thousands today, I take it as the same way they meant it in 1860. Can you just clear that up?
Yeah, and I think the New York Times is being deliberately dishonest here. And I think also the effort to frame this in pure, right? No, that would never happen, right? They didn't try to cover up the genocide that Stalin unleashed against the Ukrainians by invasion. They've got a long history of this. They painted Fidel Castro as a freedom fighter and the George Washington of Latin America. They've got a very long history of this. But the history of South Africa is very complicated, and everybody needs to acknowledge that. But these are genocide songs. We need to be very clear. These are songs aimed at promoting hatred and ultimately the extermination of this particular people group that is identifiable by its culture, by its language, by its Christian heritage. It is a nation in the true sense of the term. And so as I was seeing all this, I said, I have to do something about this. You're right, Glenn. It was terribly unpopular. I got called names and things like this. But I did a cover story in the New American Magazine 2012 called Genocide and Communism Threaten South Africa. And I did a companion piece for it, South African Communists' Friends in High Places, where I showed the role of people like Henry Kissinger and David Rockefeller in bringing this situation about. And the reason it's so important, Glenn, and I hope we can get into this a little bit more, the reason it's so important for Americans to understand this is the model and the plan they have for you. The Boers, the Afrikaners, they're the Afrikaners because they came from Holland and Denmark and Germany and France to Africa. Right. We are the Amerikaners. That's what they call us because we went to America. Our histories are very closely paralleled. They diverge, of course, when the Afrikaners fought against the British Empire. They lost. They were trying to preserve the independence of their little republics down there, the Orange Free State and the ZAR. When we fought the British Empire, we won. But other than that, our histories, they are the closest thing we have to cousins anywhere in the world. And what is happening is a microcosm of what they want to do to the United States and the broader Christian West, and they're even using the same tactics.
So go through that. What are the tactics that they're using?
Well, there are several. First and foremost, I would say the racial division and the effort to paint the target group as some sort of innately horrible, evil group of people. And as somebody who has been all over the world, who's lived outside the United States almost my entire life, who goes to these UN conferences, I can tell you that's happening right this moment. they are painting Americans as a danger to the world, right? We're climate criminals. Now Donald Trump is pulling out of all these climate agreements. We are a threat to the world. We're getting out of the World Health Organization. We're these greedy, selfish Americans. We don't want to share our medicine. We just want to steal money from the whole world. The colonialism. Of course, the racial narrative, the same racial narrative is actually being used against Americans right now overseas. Americans are these racist yahoos who built a system on white supremacy. We abuse the Indians, and we don't deserve to exist. And they show things like, for example, George Floyd. And they look at that in foreign newspapers. They think, wow, America's this terrible white supremacist, evil society that needs to be dismantled. And then you look at the actual tactics for how they waged the war within South Africa, very similar to what's happening now. People pouring across the border, intelligence operatives from East Germany, from the Soviet Union, from Mozambique, from Angola, from Libya, from Cuba, you name it, training terrorist cadres, engaging in terrorist acts. And we haven't seen anything like what South Africa has seen, to be clear. In the 70s, we saw a little taste of that with Barack Obama's buddy Bill Ayers when he and his minions were bombing the State Department, bombing the Pentagon, bombing the Capitol, murdering police officers, and then bombing their funerals. They realized that was not going to be a successful tactic at that time, but they will come back to that if and when they think the time is right. And I think they think that the time is almost right.
I think you're exactly right. I mean, I did a special last week, Alex, on what is the left planning, because none of the things that they're doing right now are lining up with the mood of America. They are going more radical, more dangerous, more violent. And it's being encouraged by the leaders of the far left in the Democratic Party. And most Democrats, and I think most Americans, are just going, oh, well, it's a crazy left. No. This is the exact opposite of what you do if you're trying to win elections. This is what you do if you're trying to create civil unrest and possible civil war.
That's exactly right, Glenn. And then all you have to do is look at the rhetoric, right? I mean, at this point, they're not even hiding it anymore. How could we forget Jamie Raskin talking about blocking Trump even if it led to civil war conditions? I mean, those were his words, right? Not mine. A member of Congress, a prominent Democrat, advocating resistance to Trump even if it meant civil war-like conditions. You look at the way some of these members of Congress are talking, some of the way these Democrat mayors and Democrat governors are talking. And I think a lot of conservative Americans are kind of insulated from this, Glenn. You know, they go to church, they hang out with their social circle, their family. Yep. They don't realize the rage that is being stirred up and fomented deliberately on the other side, sometimes with blatant lies and fake news. Sometimes they take the grain of truth and blow it all out of proportion. But they are stirring people up into a blind rage. And they're telling these people, I mean, their term is Trump is literally Hitler. And if he's literally Hitler and his supporters are literally supporting a Hitler, anything is justified to stop them.
Yes.
So we are, I think, heading into some very dangerous territory here, and I think your average conservative American is clueless about what's coming.
So tell me, do they have a deep state in South Africa?
They do, and it's actually intimately intertwined with our deep state here. That companion article that I mentioned earlier, South African Communist Friends in High Places, what I showed is that subversives within our own State Department were building up the deep state there. Now, let's go back a little bit further. First, we start with the Soviet Union, because a lot of this had its roots in Moscow. The South African Communist Party was the first major communist party that the Soviets set up outside of the Soviet Union. It was, for all intents and purposes, a tentacle of the Soviet Communist Party. And what's really interesting, Glenn, this is one of the ways you know this is not a racial issue, right? The issue is never the issue. It's always the revolution. The original slogan of the Communist Party in South Africa was, whites unite to keep South Africa white.
Wow.
Absolutely. They only adopted the quote-unquote black liberation when they realized that would be a more effective tactic for bringing South Africa to its knees and putting all those strategic critical minerals and shipping lanes in their hands. So they basically took over an existing structure, the African National Congress, to the point where the entire leadership of the ANC was dominated by actual card-carrying members of the South African Communist Party. And whistleblowers from both of those parties came and testified to this fact in Congress. So you had a very powerful communist apparatus there that was supported by the Soviet Union and all the Soviet satellite states. They were getting huge amounts of money. Of course, the UN was backing them as well. And then you add to that, the U.S. deep state was supporting them to the point where our government, starting even in the 1950s, was pouring millions. By the time it was all done, hundreds of millions, according to Rand University, hundreds of millions of dollars into these subversive communist groups like SWAPO, the Southwest African People's Organization, like the Pan-Africanist Congress, which was kind of an offshoot of the ANC, pouring money into this, very much like what they did in Zimbabwe, right? And it was the same situation in Zimbabwe where the U.S. deep state then got involved, and they presented a false binary. Your choices are either apartheid or communist revolution. And what they didn't tell people was a lot of the African nations in South Africa were actually allied with the Afrikaners against the communist revolution. None probably more significantly than the Zulus, who were brutally and viciously targeted by the communists through necklacing, through mass murder, horrific things. And so we watched this really interesting situation where the communist powers of the world were united in the same end goal in South Africa with some of the most elite and powerful institutions in the United States. And, of course, Reagan spoke out about this a little bit, tried to stop some of this. They actually put the ANC and some of the key leaders on the U.S. terrorist list. But ultimately, it proved to be too much, and they ended up with a communist revolution, which now is entering its second phase, where they just steal stuff and kill people who get in the way.
Okay, so we're going to get into that and back into the genocide. Alex, I would just talk to my producer here, put him on hold and just get an answer. Make sure that he can stay for the full hour with me because he's got a lot to say. And America, you need to hear this. First, let me tell you about Relief Factor. If you could go back and do things differently, there's a lot of things that I would change. One of them is I would not have walked across that plank on a two-story, out of a two-story window as I was taking and remodeling a house when I was about, 25, as I fell out of that two-story window and screwed up my back forever. Now, maybe you would have done something different to stop that knee injury, and got into college more seriously instead of just toughing it out. Maybe you would have listened to somebody when they told you, hey, you're going to feel that in your 40s or your 50s, and you're dealing with the pain now, the kind that changes how you move. I would like to recommend Relief Factor. Relief Factor can get you your sleep back because you're up in pain all night, tossing and turning. It will take away the moments where you're like, I don't know if I can do that. I'll hurt too much. Get rid of some of the aches and pains and some of the mistakes that we all made with Relief Factor. It's all natural. You just try it for 3 weeks, get their 3-week quick start trial, and see how this drug-free product can actually improve your life. You'll feel it in days, maybe just in days, but definitely 3 weeks. If you're not feeling anything in 3 weeks, stop taking it. It's $19.95 for that 3-week trial. $19.95. Take it, relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com, or call 800-4-RELIEF, 800-4-RELIEF. 10 seconds, station ID.
This is the Blaze Radio Network.
So usually what communists do is they cause all kinds of strife. Then they start to eliminate the people that can stand against them. And then they also take away property. Because once you take away property, you take away the power from the people to stand against the government. And it happens over and over and over and over again. Where are we on that, Alex, in South Africa?
Well, South Africa has now, and this is their language, right? This is not me providing analysis. This is the way they speak of it. So their revolution was divided up into 2 phases. The first phase has officially faded into history now. The first phase was where we appeared to be moderate. And actually the current president, Cyril Ramaphosa, he actually was quoted in numerous reputable newspapers in Southern Africa talking about the strategy of boiling the Afrikaners like frogs. You got to do it slowly because if you go too quickly, they'll jump out, they'll resist, they'll fight back. So this has been a long-term strategy. Now they're in the second phase of the revolution, and in the second phase, they have already launched some of their most significant programs, the very obvious one being the theft. Now, they have a fancy term for it. They call it expropriation without compensation, but a much simpler way of saying that is just stealing, right? When you expropriate something without compensation, that's taking private property from someone and giving them nothing in exchange. They have now legalized that. The parliament voted on that, approved that, even though it was a violation of their nation's constitution. So we've now entered the second phase. they're now dropping the mask. And back, I think it was about 8 years ago, I'd have to go back in my records, but I've written dozens of articles on this. The ANC, which is the ruling party, which has governed South Africa in an alliance with the South African Communist Party since the Afrikaners voted to surrender political control, they openly declared in their foreign policy document that Communist China was, in their terms, the guiding lodestar of our struggle. So they look to Communist China as the model. If you go to South Africa today, it's filled with Communist Chinese, quote-unquote, companies and agents and assistants and trainers. So that's the direction they're moving. And I believe they're getting very close to the time when they just openly unleash. The murders have been going on for decades. Thousands and thousands of farmers have been murdered in the most brutal fashion imaginable. And I believe if they think they can get away with it, they'll move to full-blown extermination sooner rather than later.
So then let me take you to the White House next and what President Trump did and the reaction of all of the press and what the truth is behind this. We'll do that next. Don't go anywhere.
This is Glenn Beck.
You ever see that guy on the hill or on the beach with a metal detector, a pickaxe, a pan, just hoping to strike gold? Yes, 2025, and, he's out there prospecting like it's 1849. Look, he might seem a little eccentric, but, maybe he's not as crazy as he looks because at least he understands something that most people still refuse to understand. Gold holds its value. When the dollar drops, when the markets flip, when Washington starts printing trillions of dollars to solve problems they created, gold doesn't care. It gets stronger. And that's what's happening right now. The good news is you don't have to grow a beard and move to, Alaska or Nevada and start digging a hole in your backyard to get it. You have Lear Capital instead, and they make it easy to diversify a portion of your savings or retirement into physical gold or silver. Real assets shipped directly to you or held safely in an IRA. No pickaxe required. Please, if you are close to retirement, please look into this. You're already losing so much value, half of the value of your dollar that you were going to retire on, gone. 800-957-GOLD. Get your free $4,200 gold report before it's a history book. 800-957-GOLD.
Sign up at glennbeck.com for the free email newsletter. It's every story we talk about every day at glennbeck.com.
Fearless with Jason Whitlock.
I'm not a fake tough guy. And the reason I say that is because I'm not fighting with anybody. I'm 58 years old. But if you want to get in a verbal war, a substantive war with me back and forth about what level of comfort we have with who we actually are, that's a battle you cannot win.
Fearless with Jason Whitlock, only on the Blaze Radio Network.
Subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are found. Relatable with Allie.
Transit is the middle school ministry, so 6th to 8th graders at North Point Community Church, where Andy Stanley is the senior pastor. So the Transit website says this about the middle school years. We know that middle school can be complicated. Students are growing up fast and need a place where they can learn how God sees them. The training videos included Transit Director Britt Kitchen instructing small group leaders on how to handle issues related to their upcoming teaching series on sexuality. First, I think it is great that any church is taking matters of sexuality and identity seriously, that they're not just brushing it under the rug, that they're not just hoping that, okay, maybe parents and students will kind of deduce what God thinks about these things. I think churches should be addressing these things head on.
Relatable with Allie Beth Stuckey.
On the Blaze Radio Network.
Subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are found.
Do we encounter the supernatural? Yes. But does that mean that we are encountering space aliens, ghosts, Bigfoot, monsters? I would say no. Spiritual warfare between angels and demons is extremely real. You may think you're talking to angels, but you're not. The space people, but you're not. To a ghost, but you're not. You're talking to demons. We don't talk about these things, but yet we send people out of our congregations out into a spiritual war that we have not prepared them to fight. When you see the evil of the world today, why did this person slaughter all these innocent people in cold blood? Because they're likely possessed with the demon. Spiritual warfare is real. It should not be ignored. It should not be obsessed over, but you got to know how it works. That's what this podcast is all about. If you don't belong to Jesus, you can shout Jesus' name in your house all you want to when it's under demonic attack, and it's not going to accomplish anything because you don't belong to Jesus. I hope that you'll go on this journey with us and understand the seriousness of these strange encounters.
Strange Encounters with Rick Burgess. Available now on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
If you're living with aches and pains, especially if they're frequent and nagging and relentless, I want you to take a moment and think back to the last time you really felt good. Can you even remember what it felt like? Now, here's even a more important question. What would you give to go back to feeling like that again? Maybe it would just be nice to take a stroll with your loved one or play with your grandchildren. I've suffered from persistent, crippling pain almost all the time for about 5 years. When I started taking Relief Factor, I took it because my wife made me start taking it. I didn't think it would work for me. Yet here I am today, virtually pain-free, doing the things I love to do, all thanks to my wonderful wife and Relief Factor. I love that it's not a drug, but it was developed by doctors, and about 70% of the people who try it go on to order more. Are you part of that 70% that can get your life back? Your first step to becoming pain-free just might be to order the 3-week quick start for only $19.95. Go to relieffactor.com or call 800-4RELIEF. Find out more about this offer. Feel the difference. relieffactor.com. Imagine this. You're watching a football game. The running back scores the winning touchdown, looks into the camera and yells, "Hi, Mom." What about Dad? Okay? I mean, I get it. All dads are not perfect. Some have a tough time expressing their feelings, but your dad does love you, and he just wants to know you appreciate him. This Father's Day, let your dad know you do. Give him a gift from American Giant. 14 years ago, a dad, saved a factory in North Carolina from closing by creating American Giant. They use American cotton, American hands, American heart to make the clothing right here in America. No outsourcing, no shortcuts. Everything made the American way with the quality you can feel. Let your dad know he's an American Giant. Get him a shirt, a jacket, or the best hoodie you'll ever own from American Giant. Go to american-giant.com/Glenn. Get 20% off your first purchase. Buy American today. american-giant.com/Glenn. The older I get, the more I think about trust. I think about the people in my life who have my trust and earned my trust, and the trust that I have placed in some people who I later learned abused that trust. I know we're alike in that way. We don't trust a lot of people anymore. It's like we're all Ronald Reagan, trust but always verify to make sure we're not making a mistake. I find it a little exhausting, quite honestly, and that's why I started realestateagentsitrust.com. I didn't have good experiences with buying and selling my homes, so we built Real Estate Agents I Trust to introduce you to one of the thousands of agents all over the country that we work with that we have verified that they will help you have the most successful and good real estate transaction possible. Our network agents share our sensibilities, have great track records, are good and decent people, and I trust them to help you with your real estate needs. So whether you're moving across town or across the country, visit realestateagentsitrust.com. The name says it all, realestateagentsitrust.com.
Steve Deace.
Paul writes in Romans chapter 12, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice. That line right there. That is part of my daily prayer, to be a living sacrifice, meaning I did not buy myself away from bondage, from hell. I was bought at a high price by someone else. And that means there's a debt that I could never repay because it was a debt I couldn't pay in the first place. That's why he had to pay it for me.
The Steve Deace Show.
Weekdays on the Blaze Radio Network. You're listening to the Blaze Radio Network.
So when Trump started talking about South Africa in the White House, it was pretty powerful. I mean, I've tried to look into this, what's happening to the farmers, et cetera, for years. And unless you go there, you're just not going to find any answers that are satisfying because you don't know who to trust. Alex Newman, he's a journalist. He's the CEO of Liberty Sentinel Media, and he's been on the show several times. What I didn't know is that he moved when he was 18 to South Africa, so he knows it kind of very intimately and very well and has been writing about this for a long time. Do you have any idea, Alex, why the president decided to bring this up, and deal with it the way he did, which I think honestly was genius?
I think it was genius as well, and I'm very grateful that he finally drew attention to this. He's probably one of the few people on the planet with a megaphone big enough to get over the dishonesty by the fake media, and he did a masterful job of that. My understanding is that several of the people close to him, incidentally including Elon Musk, have shared this information with him and have explained to him the urgency of this situation. And, he knew that it was going to result in a lot of attacks, just as it has, of course. How many fake fact checks did we see in the immediate aftermath of that meeting? But he's got some people around him who understand what's going on, who understand how important it is to shine a light on this. And so I, for one, am very grateful that he did it, and I think he did it very well. The media, they're seizing on little nitpicky things. He made a little mistake here, a little mistake there. But the big picture that he did was exactly correct.
Yeah. Well, it's good to hear. One of the things that they nitpicked, they were like, only, I don't remember what the number was, 2,000 or 5,000 white farmers have been killed. And South Africa has, 28,000 murders a year. 28,000 murders a year. So we have 19,000 murders a year. We are 350 million. They're about 60 million. So this shows that the government is completely out of control. They've lost control of society and the civilization. Murder is, apparently a popular pastime now, but that doesn't diminish what is happening to the farmers, because they are all saying the Afrikaners are the problem and they need to be killed. But then they always walk it back and say, one of them, well, not yet. Yeah, and our press just agrees with it.
Yeah, and let's seize on that for just a moment, Glenn. This shows you how dishonest the media is, right, and how dishonest Ramaphosa is. One of the videos that Trump, actually several of the videos that Trump showed featured Julius Malema, and he was described by the president of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, as an opposition leader, and we don't agree with that policy. What he didn't give you was the background. Julius Malema was the leader of the ANC Youth League, and he was openly singing those songs for years and years and years in his capacity as the leader of the ANC Youth League. Now, it's true he has gone off and formed a separate party, the Economic Freedom Fighters, which that's what they do. They fight against economic freedom. But he is very, very closely connected to the power establishment in South Africa and also in England, by the way, which is very interesting. He's got a lot of big friends and supporters in England and even here in the United States. And they work very closely with the ANC government. So Ramaphosa was being very dishonest there. The media was being very dishonest there. This is a guy who is like two peas in a pod with the ruling establishment in South Africa. And by the way, he's not the only one singing these songs. I mentioned Jacob Zuma earlier. While he was president, member of the ANC, singing similar genocide songs, Bring Me My Machine Gun, We're going to shoot all the Boers, My Cabinet's going to shoot all the Boers. They're dead serious about this, and the media is being incredibly dishonest.
Tell me what we know for sure about the white farmers.
So here's another really important point to pick up on, because that's one of the attacks that the media used to argue against Trump. They said, well, murder affects all South Africans, and that's what Cyril Ramaphosa said. And that's true. South Africa is one of the most violent societies in the world today. There's no doubt about it. But what we're seeing with the murderers of these Afrikaner farmers, these Boers, is something on a whole nother level. A normal murder, if you want to call it that, in South Africa, you pull up at a red light, some guy pulls out a gun, shoots you in the head, drives off with your car. That's a normal murder in South Africa, and that happens to all kinds of people. You drive a nice car, you have a nice watch, expect to be in big trouble. What's happening to the Afrikaner farmers is very different. These are orchestrated raids. They're planned out months in advance. And I can't even say some of the things on the radio, Glenn. I don't want to get you in trouble. Some of the things that they're doing to these people defy belief. It's almost demonic. The torture, the savagery that goes into this, the drilling people full of holes with electric drills, torching them with blow torches, raping women, children, elderly in front of their husbands, in front of their parents.
It is evil, Alex. You know that. I mean, I know you well enough to know you know that. It is the same evil that is sweeping the world with Hamas and what's happening in Israel. There is a very powerful evil that has been unleashed and is worshipped by many people on the planet right now, that has to be called out by name and has to be stood up against. And only, quite honestly, if you ever feel any of this in your life around your children, raise your hand to the square and chase it out in the name of Jesus Christ. I mean, it is real. It is real.
It is, Glenn. And when they're done mutilating these people, when they're done brutalizing these people, they take the family Bible and they leave it on their dead body. They rip out pages from the Bible and leave it on the dead body. They leave nasty notes on the gate. They drag these people behind pickup trucks. This is murder that is motivated by a hatred that is almost impossible to understand. It only makes sense when you see it in the context that you just explained. This is evil that we're dealing with. Afrikaners stand in the way of this communist revolution. They built essentially a Western Christian society down there, and that cannot be allowed to stand. And so that's what when I call South Africa a microcosm of what they're planning for all of us, I mean that in the most literal sense. They took at least 12 nations that are really very distinct nations, different languages, different religions, different heritage, different traditions. Many of them had been at war with each other, genociding each other, long before any Europeans ever showed up. And they amalgamated them all under a unitary, all-powerful communist state, which we call today the South African government, the Republic of South Africa. And what they're trying to do is mold them all into this perfect utopia. Obviously, we see what happens, the same thing that happens when communism is unleashed anywhere. But when you understand that that's the model that they want to use for the world, right? Imagine America as the Afrikaners. We are one out of 193 votes in the UN General Assembly. Now, the last leader of the UN, Ban Ki-moon, was openly calling the UN General Assembly the Parliament of Humanity. The BRICS nations and the G77 plus China nations got together. They said we should empower the General Assembly to be an emblem of global sovereignty. Well, what happens if the UN or some similar organization becomes an emblem of global sovereignty? Is America will be in the exact same position as the Afrikaners find themselves in right now. No control over our destiny, no ability to protect our individual rights on our private property. We will be completely at the mercy of the all-powerful unitary state that they're trying to impose on us. And again, that's the model they're using, and you can read it in their own papers.
So in 2008 and 9, I spoke a lot about the consequences of a collapsing dollar. When we inflate our dollar, when we go unstable, because we are the world's reserve currency, it inflates the prices for everyone else. If we go and start going down, believe me, this is what I warned against for 15 years. The rest, politicians just want a scapegoat. That's it. So if their people are hurting, they want to point the finger to somebody else. And the easiest finger to point will be to the United States. And everybody will forget the goodness and the grace of the United States. And all they will look at is how greedy we were, how out of control we were, how we were nothing but warmongers. And we wanted our stuff, and we've made the rest of the world pay for our stuff. And they will unleash a global hatred on us, take our stuff, and kill us. And that is just a fact. If we don't fix ourselves, we're not going to survive. Is that too crazy to say, Alex?
That's exactly what's happening, Glenn, and I'm glad you mentioned that. And I go to these UN conferences, right? I was going to the UN climate conferences. I've been doing that for 15 years. During the last Trump administration, I just wish I could show people what I saw there. I mean, we got video. I did articles about it, but you can't quite put it into words. I'll give you one example. I was at the UN Climate Summit in Katowice in Poland. This was the COP24, if I'm not mistaken. And there's a government-funded, taxpayer-funded little group called ICANN that the Putin Kremlin has been funding, and a bunch of other groups through a shell company in Bermuda. We can get into that some other day. And they have this contest that they do every day, which is the worst country in the world. And they have first place, second place, third place. Well, America won first place, second place, and third place. We're the cause of every storm, every hurricane, every warmth, every drought, every rain, because we are stuck to our SUVs and we're greedy, just like you said. Then you add to that the racial dimension. People around the world today, including, by the way, the immigrants who are coming to the United States legally and illegally, are being taught that America is built on white supremacy and hatred. They will all feel totally justified in coming after us if we don't get this under control. And like you said, Glenn, fix ourselves, because that is what they're telling the world right now. We've got to stop this narrative, and it starts by just calling it out.
Alex, I think you are, I think this is one of the more important interviews I've done in a very, very long time. You are a voice that needs to be heard. If you're around today, I'd like to call you and talk to you about this some more. There's a lot to learn here and a lot to share. Thank you so much, Alex. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I look forward to talking to you.
You bet. That is Alex Newman. He is a journalist, the CEO of Liberty Sentinel Media, the author of Indoctrinating Our Children. He's been on several times. This is the first time we've talked to him about South Africa, because I just read something from him last night or the night before, and saw him speak about South Africa and how it is deeply connected to what is coming here. This goes back to the connection that we were making last Wednesday night on our Wednesday night special, when I was saying none of this makes sense unless you're planning a revolution. What's happening on the left and those who are uber left in Congress and in the Democratic Party, I'm telling you, they are not peaceful. They are looking to create, because they're not doing anything that will win them votes. What they're doing is creating more division, and they're using stronger language than ever before. And you need to pay attention to it. More in just a minute. First,